Welcome back to Enterprise Unleashed, business law and innovation with experienced business strategist and trial attorney Richard P. Corey. Nicknamed The Closer, my man Richard prides himself on striving to maximize his clients' desired outcomes in both transactional and litigation settings. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're exploring the psychology behind effective negotiation. Richard will explain how strategy, timing, and emotional control separate successful deal makers from everyone else. Richard, sir, welcome back, brother.
Evan, what's up, man? I'm glad to be back with you.
Going on. Let's break down this psychology. Richard, what makes negotiation such a critical skill for business owners beyond just getting that best deal on paper?
Two things: finesse and leverage. So a lot of times people come in, there's no one size fits all. We talked about that in the last episode I recorded with you. I see a lot of attorneys, they only know one speed, aggressive. They're always the tiger in the room. Sometimes you have to be the fox. Well, I don't want to use fox. That has like a sneaky connotation, but sometimes you don't approach it as an adversarial position. Sometimes you just got to say, look, we need to make a business deal here. And it really comes down to leverage. You have to find the leverage in the situation. So, example, you know what the golden rule is? I'm asking.
Do tell.
The guy with the gold makes the rules. So, I mean, that's the golden rule. Like, you know what I mean?
That's not, you ain't wrong. You ain't wrong.
So, and when you're negotiating a deal, you have to find, the leverage. And so, example, when I negotiate a lot of commercial leases, and I'll break things down. I'll look at the terms, all the clauses, and break them into three categories. One will be the deal breakers. One will be the important terms, and the other one's the wish list. And so when I'm redlining the agreement, and it's like, all right, well, this right here, this clause right here, if they don't change it, we're not doing it, period. All right. And this clause is like, well, this would be really good if we could get this done. This would be great. And then, this clause is like, well, I doubt they'll go for it, but let's ask. You never know unless you ask. But the key is you never let the other side know what is the most important. So let's say for the clause that's like really on the wish list, it's not realistic, that it's not that it's not realistic, but knowing the situation is like, well, they're probably not going to go for it. Right. That's the one where it's like you give in to that, but that gives you the leverage to make them do the one that you actually to give in on the clause that you wanted to get accomplished the whole time. So I don't want to say bait and switch, right. But again, your approaching is like, look, these are the issues, and I may purposely harp on this one particular provision. Because I'm trying to get that provision done. It's because I'm trying to get the other one done. And once they beat me up on that, and I'll let them think they did, but that's when I pull off this, all right, well, you got to give me this. And that's what I wanted the whole time. So that's where it's like, instead of coming in and saying, I want this or we're out,
right?
That maybe that's not the way to handle this particular situation. You got to let them think like, well, all right, he gave in on this. Like it really is about identifying where you can get that leverage. It really is about leverage. How do you not force, but how do you implement the strategy to get what you want? So the ultimate end goal is like, all right, these are the deal breaking terms. And for me to get them to agree to it, I'm going to have to figure out a way to, there's a little psychology behind it. Like, it's kind of like with coaching. Yeah. Do you play sports?
Yeah, many moons ago, sir.
Yeah, but you know how some people like they do better, they perform better when the coach is saying like uplifting them. Oh, great job!
Yeah, when the coach figures out that psychology on how to maximize his players. Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing. Like other guys, they do better when they're saying they're getting screamed at. Yeah. Where if another person they get screamed at, they get discouraged. That's when they're jumping off sides and doing stuff like that. So you have to identify how do you get to, how do you reach these guys? Like how do you reach not only the other attorney, but the other party? Absolutely. So and again, I mean, and there are situations where you have to come in, puffing your chest, but it's not one size fits all. Part of being a good attorney and a good strategist is understanding how to accomplish the goal. And a lot of times it takes completely different approaches. what I try to do is make a strategically calculated, structured plan of action that's uniquely built for every single scenario that I handle. So again, I don't necessarily approach everything the same way. It just depends on the situation.
Right, but Richard, so how can understanding the psychology of that person, across the table from you, change the outcome of a negotiation?
Well, again, I work with a lot of brand ambassadors, and I can't in that situation. I don't want to go in and start like barking terms because I may ruin the relationship. I
Hmm.
don't want to, you don't want to do that. Then there's other situations where I come in like it's a business sale, and it's like, look, this is going to be how it's going to go. I'm not asking. Take it or leave it. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, so it just depends um, on what needs to be accomplished, who you're dealing with, and what the leverage is. So if we're coming in and we're buying my clients are buying a business, take it or leave it. You don't like it, we're going to go buy another one. So,
Right.
or if it's a situation where I have a brand ambassador and I'm trying to get them paid a little more than they were paid on their last contract, that's not one where I come in and start barking because they could get replaced. You know what I mean? Like, so it just depends on really what you're doing, or the type of transaction that you're doing,
Hmm.
and where you stand with respect to your ability to call shots. I mean, like,
Mm. Yeah, 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 yeah. What's the biggest mistake you see entrepreneurs make when they let their emotion or ego influence their decisions during these deals, during these negotiations?
well, when you think with emotion, you're reacting. You're not reasoning. There's a big difference. You don't want to react. You want to use reasoning.
Hmm.
So you ever seen The Godfather?
Yeah,
Where he's just like never let other people know what you're thinking,
absolutely,
and you don't. It's not personal; it's business. And
absolutely.
I know that's like from a mob movie, but that's so true.
But the
If you
practice,
start,
but the advice is still sound though.
oh yeah, no, because if you start handling things, taking it personally, then you act with emotion, and you end up doing things rash. They're not reasoned, and that's where you make
It's true.
mistakes. You get sloppy.
It's true.
So, and that happens a lot in court. I see it in court all the time where guys they get upset, or I'll do something intentionally to get under their skin, and it throws them off their game because now they're
Mm.
acting with emotion, and they get sloppy in court, and that's when they lose. So it's you don't want to react, you want to reason. In any situation, you always want to take a very calculated decision to whatever the goal is that you're trying to accomplish, and that way you avoid doing things out of emotion, which where mistakes are made, versus making a well-reasoned, well-thought, well-informed decision, and after weighing the costs and risks and benefits of the alternatives, and now you know why you're doing it, and at least that way whatever the outcome is, it's based on a reasoned judgment that you made, not on like an emotional you know what I mean? Like, it's not on an emotional trigger where you're not really thinking things through.
Richard, word on the street, you said you've been called the closer, my brother. What guiding principles define how you approach these high stakes negotiations?
Well, I didn't come up with that. I was very honored when some of my clients started calling me that.
That's great.
Um,
That's
what
great.
I do is I handle really complex problems. So what I'm able to do is I come in and I represent a lot of either big corporations or high net worth individuals that own several businesses, and I just handle their problems. And a lot of them become very expensive, or there's a lot at risk. And I find a way of getting back to like the leverage, getting
Mhm.
back to the psychology of things. We I pride myself on getting the deal done, no matter what the obstacles are. And what that takes is preparation
Mm.
and not acting with emotion. You have to make
Right.
well reasoned judgment. And also, a lot of times, I have to keep my clients in check. I have to bring them back down to earth. Like, look, you're never going to get this. And if we take this road, you're going to lose, or this is going to be, this is not in your best interest.
Mm.
They're not paying me to be their friend. I'm their attorney.
Absolutely.
So with the whole closer thing, I close deals. I mean, it is what it is. So
But Richard, how important is silence, patience, timing when we're dealing with these negotiations and you're trying to create that leverage at the table?
oh, that's a really good question. You know, the most intelligent person in the room typically says the least.
It's true.
So, you have somebody who's coming in and, like, example, in any negotiation, the person who commits to a dollar amount first loses. Here's why. All right. Look, Evan, I want to hire you. What kind of salary would you like? Go ahead, tell me.
Uh, 250,000.
All right. You have no idea if I'm willing to pay you 300, or if, at that point I can say, well, 250, let's start at 200. Or,
Mm,
like it allows me to sit and see where you're at. I gauge you, and you have no
right,
idea what I'm thinking.
right.
So, again, and when it comes, and that's a simple example, but when it comes to negotiating these bigger deals, as soon as you commit to a number or you commit to a term, you can't really backtrack. So
Mm,
a lot of times like, if I'm redlining a contract, I tell my clients, like, look, I can't send this to the other side and then we decide we want to change something. Whatever we're going to do, we have to do it now, because once you commit to this term, it's almost like bad faith. And I don't operate in bad faith ever. I don't sacrifice my integrity for anybody, include like for it's just, it's not worth it. But if you go in and you say, okay, I want these terms, that you're stuck, you're committed. There's no coming back from that. It's very difficult to change those terms. So again, it's when it comes to silence, in a negotiation, I always like to let the other person talk first,
hmm.
because now I know where we're at. We're able to
Okay.
see, like, where we are on the spectrum.
Okay. So what does it mean to negotiate from a position of strength? How can a smaller business do that even without massive resources though, Rich?
You have to find a way to, again, to find the leverage, and I'll compare it to like a settlement discussion. Let's say I get a default against a company. That means that everything that I alleged in the lawsuit against them is admitted. So now we're trying to settle before we have to go to trial, and they're coming to me saying, "Oh, this is unreasonable." I'll say, "Well, I didn't ask you if it was reasonable at this point. You have no leverage. All right, we won. There's nothing you can do about it. Either take it or leave it." That's a situation where you come in stronger. But if I'm trying to negotiate something that is where I don't have the capital, I don't have or my client doesn't have the capital, or it's a startup, that's when you have to take a different approach.
Hmm.
Maybe you're trying to get a landlord to lower the rent a little bit because you can't afford the numbers that they're offering, like the price per square foot. And instead of coming in and being a complete, like, lion about it, you take the approach, like, look, these guys, they're going to be good paying clients, they're going to be good paying tenants. Would you rather have somebody in here renting the space
Hmm.
and give someone an opportunity to grow, or do you want to just keep the for rent sign, looking for somebody that's going to pay the asking price? And you
Right.
kind and you maybe you appeal to their humanity, or you appeal to there's a lot of things, a lot of psychology in the delivery of your statement. I actually learned that from a guy named Simon Sinek. I was watching one of his TED Talks. It's called the
Hmm.
Law of Diffusion of Innovation, where
Hmm.
different parts of the brain process information differently. So if you come in and say, you lead with a what I do or what we want, that will be processed by the part of the brain that has that handles your analyzing. If I
Hmm.
come in and hit you with a why, like a purpose, that's processed by a different part of the brain, the one that drives human action. So in other
Wow.
words, like, look, if I'm trying to get you to agree to lower the rent, say, look, and I know I have no leverage. We don't have the money. We don't have the power yet. Say, look, do you remember being in this position? Look at these guys. They're just getting started, and like, appeal to their humanity. Not nothing tricky, but just by the changing the delivery of the negotiation, you just increase the likelihood of getting something accomplished.
Hmm.
Because in that situation, if I came in beating my chest, I have no leverage. But
Right.
by coming in and basically making them want to do it,
Right.
to give these people an opportunity. To talk about like how they, this is something that paid forward. This happened to you. Like maybe I do a little research on something. Like that's one thing we do is if it, depending on, especially if it's like a big negotiation,
Right.
we'll know everything about everybody in the room. That's something that's very important because you need to know what are their needs and how do
Hmm.
you fill those needs. So you walk into a room and understanding what people want and how you can help facilitate that is how you can create leverage from nothing.
What about Richard? What about on the flip side though? If it turns tense or it's stalling, what techniques can you bring it back to more productive, more amicable grounds?
Well, that's a tough one too, because in certain situations, the stalling, there's really nothing you can do about it. And in fact, I have some business issue where partners are fighting over things, and the only other option, if we're trying to negotiate a settlement, and the only alternative is to file suit. If I file suit on behalf of my clients, I think we would win. I think we have a very good case, but the problem is the other side has more money than they do. And I'm trying to tell my clients, like, look, I know you think you're right, you are right, and I agree with you. But if we get into a lawsuit, this is going to cost you. I mean, just to get a forensic accountant is going to run you $25,000 that you don't have. And then the other side is dragging their feet intentionally, and they know that they can. That goes down to the leverage. They have the leverage. So
Hmm.
in that situation, there's what I can do about it? Nothing.
Hmm.
I could say, I can ask nicely, but there's really not much I can do. In
Right.
other
Right.
situations, dragging your feet, like I may drag my feet because it will open up other doors. Again, you have to analyze everything and see what's going on. Um, and it depends on the specific circumstances.
How can these entrepreneurs or people protect legal financial interests while still maintaining that long-term relationship with their counterparts?
It starts with coming to a fair agreement. If you lay it all out on the table from the very beginning, then there's no room for anybody to say, like, to backtrack.
Okay.
Let's say you and I are going into business, and we sit down, we have all these great ideas,
Hmm.
and everyone's pumped, but we don't put it on, we don't put it into a contract. Now it comes down to, like, all right, we need to buy a piece of equipment that you don't
Right.
want to buy. Right? There's a lot of different examples, but now we're in a disagreement, and without that contract, now we like that gives us an opportunity to fight. Or even if we don't fight, we'll end up resenting each other, which you don't
Hmm.
want. You don't want that in business. That's negative energy. You don't want that with anything. So
Absolutely.
by starting with the contract, which is the foundation of your arrangement, I mean, what you can't grow anything without a strong foundation. You even think of it as a building. Without, like, how can you build the second floor without a strong first floor? You can't. It'll come crashing down.
Hmm.
If anything, you're building a house of cards, which will come crashing down.
Hmm.
So what that contract does is it lays it out. You're doing this, he's doing that, and now you could when it comes down to, like, bringing it up in the future, you can say with a straight face, like, no, you agreed to this. Why are you changing your mind now? You agreed, you signed it, like, we negotiated this. So now that it's like it's something where if you continue to press on a different position, you're wrong. There's no, like, it is what it is. Like, now what you do from there is on you. But at that point, I've done everything I can to preserve the relationship.
Hmm. And to wrap things up, though, Richard, for anyone preparing to close a deal this quarter, what mindset should they adopt before they even walk into the room?
Oh, think big and believe in yourself. Don't be scared. Fear is an illusion. We only fear what we don't understand. So take the
Mm.
time to learn and research and be prepared to move forward. Because as you do that and you learn more, you have a better understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. You fear less because you understand it better. So
Mm.
the fear of the unknown diminishes. The fear of
Mm.
failure diminishes. So, if you're starting a new business, there are so many tools out right now. go on YouTube and learn everything there is to know about it. Go on Google and Google the people that have been successful. Look at what they read. Take the time to understand your endeavor, and then I have my law firm's enterprise that stands for systematic, purposeful activity, and that's what it takes. If you're gonna jump into any entrepreneurial endeavor, you need to put in that work. Work day after day, and don't look at the distance of the end goal. Work at taking that first step, then the next step, and focus on taking those steps the best way those steps can be taken. Next thing you know, you're closer to the end goal. And it doesn't seem so far anymore. It doesn't seem so unrealistic. And as you get closer to the goal, it becomes more clear. You see it more clearly. That means you believe in it more. And when you believe in it more, you work harder at it. You take more steps. It becomes a cycle of boom, you accomplish your goal.
Good stuff. Rich, my man, appreciate you, brother.
Evan, all the time, man. I love speaking with you. I hope we do it again soon.
And that's it for today's episode of Enterprise Unleashed, Business Law and Innovation with my man, Richard P. Corey. To connect with Richard, visit rcenterpriselaw.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone that might find it helpful. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.